The battle for the Orlando Magic is all about how we get from playoff team to contender. So which three players need to step up most? That's today's Locked On Magic.
You are Locked On Magic, your daily Orlando Magic podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And you are indeed Locked On Magic. Today is August 4th. It will be August 5th, 2024. My name is Philip Rossman-Reich. I'm the senior writer over at OrlandoMagicDaily.com. Of course, find me on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD. On today's episode of Locked On Magic, the three players that will help the Magic go from playoff team to contender that are Paolo, Banchero, and Franz Wagner, because those guys obviously have to. We'll get to that coming up here in just a moment. But first, we want to thank you again for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day, no matter when you listen to us, whether it's first thing in the morning, whether it's right when we upload. We truly appreciate you making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. Remember, there's a great Locked On podcast covering every single team in the NBA. Just search for Locked On and the team you're looking for. The Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. So like I said, or teased at the opening of the show, this Magic team will go as far as Paolo, Banchero, and Franz Wagner take them. And we will talk some Franz tomorrow. We'll talk maybe a little Paolo tomorrow as well. Paolo and Franz are really important. Their stars are everything. And obviously, the Magic are leaning on their stars to take them to that next level, to that next place. And so I want to start this conversation with that point. I am not ignoring them. I am not sitting here saying they're not important by not naming them. They are extremely important. But every discussion I've had and every fake trade I get pitched is essentially everyone trying to figure out how do the Magic get from where they are now to the next level. You might remember we spent a whole year talking about the Magic leveling up. We are still, at least to some extent, talking about leveling up. And while I've said that, we have to divorce progress from results a little bit, at the end of the day, this team is measured on whether we believe they are closer or further away from a championship, whether that means how far they advance in the playoffs or the way and style that they are playing. At the end of the day, that's the goal and that's the place this franchise, this team is trying to get to. And while there are lots of great trade ideas out there, whether it's Anthony Simons or Dennis Schroeder or whoever else, there are a lot, Darius Garland, there are still lots of trade ideas out there trying to figure out how to make this Magic team better in the short term. We can sit here and say with some certainty that the Magic aren't doing anything the rest of the summer. They are done for the summer. The roster is complete. It is ready to go. They are done. That's it. That's the deal. They're going to go with this roster. And while there's a lot of people saying, the Magic should be trying to do a little bit more, there's also a lot of people saying the Magic are smart to do the thing that the Oklahoma City Thunder did, not to push too many chips into one idea, to allow their young players to grow and develop and figure themselves out. They are a winning team. Winning is important, but so is development. Having said that, we still need to see progress. And whether this idea works out or not depends on how all those puzzle pieces fit together and who steps up to fill the roles that we clearly see. And no player probably has more pressure on them. No player probably has more on the line in this season than Jalen Suggs. At the end of the season, we all sat here and said, I sat here and said at the very least, the most important need on the Magic's roster after the playoffs was the point guard position. The lack of a point guard, the lack of a playmaker, the lack of a creator was a major detraction on this team. It was something they desperately needed to just ease the burden for Paolo Banchero and get him some easy shots. Again, this team is going to go as far as Paolo and Franz can take them, they've got to do everything in their power to make his life easier. And, well, I think generally everyone believes the Magic did a good job this offseason, and adding Kentavious Caldwell-Pope was a great signing. I think all of us are still wondering whether the Magic did that job. Whether if we get back to when we get back to the playoffs in April, if that's going to be the case. If Paolo's going to be able to match what he did, if Franz can raise his game, because he struggled in the playoffs for obvious reasons. No player has more pressure on them to get this team up to that next level than Jalen Suggs. Because with the Magic signing Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, a pure 3-and-D wing, a high-level 3-and-D wing, a really important 3-and-D wing, the Magic not only locked in their starting five for the foreseeable future, and we'll get to one of those positions here in a minute, they not only locked in their starting five, they locked in Jalen Suggs as the quote-unquote point guard. And look, we've talked a little bit about this on the pod in previous episodes. Suggs is a player who is obviously due for more growth, but a player who is not a natural point guard. Yes, he had a career season last year, but he still averaged only 2.7 assists per game against 1.8 turnovers per game. Certainly he has come a long way from his rookie year when he was at 4.4 and 3, but some of that was also the Magic putting guardrails up to rein in some of his excesses. Yes, Suggs became a more reliable three-point shooter, shooting 39.9% from three. Yes, Suggs was really important in the Magic's 3 wins during the playoffs, 14.7 points per game. But as much as we want to talk about Franz Wagner in Game 7, Jalen Suggs was 2 for 13 in Game 7 too. The Magic need more scoring. They need more creation. They need more playmaking from their backcourt. And while Kentavious Caldwell-Pope will add the shooting, Jalen Suggs is the one who has to step up his game. We spent plenty of ink and plenty of time on these airwaves talking about Suggs' potential contract and how much is he worth to the team, because we know what he's going to bring defensively. But without the offensive piece, it's hard to know what he's worth for this team and whether he can be the Magic's third $30 million a year player. Whether Jalen Suggs can play point guard or not is probably the question of this offseason and of this upcoming season. The thing we do not know about this current team. The biggest bet, for quite frankly, that the Magic are making about this season is whether Suggs can play that role. If he can, then the Magic could elevate themselves to a new level. If he can be the game manager, the table setter that the Magic hope he can be, that the Magic need him to be to make Paolo's life easier, to get Franz some spot-up shots, Paolo some open shots. If he can be that, this Magic team goes from a playoff team to a serious contender rather than a team that needs to find it. That is the central question for the Magic this coming season. And the central concern everybody has about this roster, whether they have enough creation and scoring from their guard spots. Now, they don't need Jalen Suggs to be a pure point guard because Paolo and Franz are going to handle the ball a lot, and that's okay. This is about easing the burden on them, giving them more support. And to be sure, the Magic need a career season from Jalen Suggs. They need him to build on his successes in 2024 and meet the potential we all saw from him on draft night in 2025. No player can take the Magic from merely good to very good to great. Outside of their 2 stars, Paolo and Franz, no player can take them to that higher level more than Jalen Suggs. But he's not the only player who has to step up and we have to see more from We'll talk about two other players, including a starter, that have a lot to prove this coming season. We'll get to that coming up here in just a moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by our friends over at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With more than 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you will always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. We want to thank you for making Locked On Magic your first listen of the day. For your second listen, enjoy the Locked On NBA podcast. There is no offseason in the NBA, and Locked On NBA provides daily basketball analysis from national and local experts in 30 minutes or less. No one keeps you as informed and entertained as Locked On NBA, available on YouTube or wherever you get podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Jalen Suggs probably has the most attention and focus put on him. And I think that is fair to say. I think that he has a lot on his plate for the coming season. But there are a lot of guys on this team who have to step up. I feel like everyone believes this Magic team is inevitable. And look, Paolo's going to be better. Franz is going to be better. We're seeing how much better Franz is in the Olympics, quite frankly, even if his shooting isn't quite where we want it to be yet. This team is going to be better in many ways. But repeating last year's success is no guarantee. And I'm trying to stress this point to manage expectations a little bit. There are a lot of questions about this roster. But one thing I think we are all super excited about, one thing I think every Magic fan is really, really hyped about, and could be an absolute game changer in terms of the kind of lineups the Magic could throw out, how much they can rest and keep Paolo and Franz fresh. Again, if the goal is to make Paolo and Franz's life easier, some of that is having enough depth so they don't have to play 35, 36 minutes until we get to the playoffs. And Jonathan Isaac has the potential to be a truly, truly game-changing player. At this point, we all know the kind of defensive impact he has. Even last year, in his limited minutes, in his limited appearances, he averaged 1.9 stocks per game, that's steals and blocks, and 4.5 stocks per 36 minutes. The Magic had an outstanding 102.1 defensive rating with Isaac on the floor. Even with the Magic being the third best defensive team in the league, that's 8.7 points per 100 possessions better than the team's average. Opponents shot just 52.7% against him at the rim. The criticism on Isaac, or the criticism that people faced when they tried to analyze Isaac, everyone would say, oh, he's the best per minute defender in the NBA. Well, he's playing only 15 minutes per game. One of the big challenges for the Orlando Magic coming up, one of the big things that the Magic are going to have to do is they're going to have to find a way to scale Isaac up. That is perhaps the biggest piece of this puzzle for the Orlando Magic. Is can we take Jonathan Isaac from 15 minutes per game to 24 minutes per game? Can we play him half the games? And look, he played 12 games last year of 24 minutes or more. As the season wore on, as we got to the end of the year, the Magic were trying pretty desperately at times to figure out how do we stretch his minutes and get the most out of him. It is no coincidence the Magic were trying to experiment with lineups where he was playing backup center. It is Personally, I don't think it worked, but it speaks to the confidence the Magic had in Isaac and his health that he played as a starting center in games 1 and 2 against Jared Allen. Again, I don't think it worked. I think that showed some of the limitations in Isaac as a defender, which his critics would say existed because he only played 15 minutes per game. But in any case, the Magic certainly want more of Isaac. They don't want less. They want to find ways to play him more. And as Jonathan Isaac pointed out on that mini video that the Orlando Magic put out about a week ago now, this is the first time Jonathan Isaac's had a fully healthy offseason since 2019. He has been dealing with some injury, some surgery, something or another every summer and has not been able to improve his skills and focus specifically on him and his ability. He hasn't been able to advance. He's always been trying to maintain or recover. This is the first time in 5 years that he's been able to work on himself and work on his game. And if you go back and remember what that 2019-20 season was like before the injury on January 1st, 2020, Jonathan Isaac showed some real improvement in those games. Jonathan Isaac was just plainly excellent when he was able to use that time to recover. His three-point shot has come a long way. He shot like 37% last year. He struggled in the playoffs. I'm not going to sit here and deny that. But Isaac can put a lot more pieces together and still give you that humongous defensive impact. I'm not joking when I say this. The Magic have 3 all-defensive team level players on their team. Or 3, at least 3. I think they have 4. They have at least 3 all-defensive team level players. Obviously, Jalen Suggs was on the all-defensive team last year. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope got votes and really wanted to be on the all-defensive team last year. Jonathan Isaac is absolutely on the all-defensive team, is absolutely a potential all-defensive team player. And Franz Wagner, I think, will make a push to be on the all-defensive team as well. He's really good defensively and is much better this year. He was good last year. He's much better now. Isaac, though, has to expand his game. And really the challenge and the trick that the Magic are trying to pull or trying to do here is figuring out how to scale him up properly. Look, I'm going to sit here and say it. I think Jonathan Isaac is the 6th man for this team. Not just, most people think of 6th man as a scorer. I think Jonathan Isaac is going to be someone that the Magic cannot play enough. They will find ways and find lineups, moving Franz to the 2 if they have to, moving Isaac to the 5 or Paolo to the 5 if they have to. They will find ways to get him on the floor as much as possible. We've seen the impact he can have. But now he's got to do it in 20 to 25 minutes per game. Not 15, not 16, not 18. He's got to be above 20 minutes per game. And that's going to be the challenge because that's the great unknown with Isaac. But you've heard me say this a million times. Hopefully you've heard me say this a million times. To be an elite team, you have to have players with elite skills. And while we're no longer in the situation where Isaac is the only player with elite skills, Paolo Banchero is an elite player. He's an elite shot maker. He is, for his size, a potentially elite playmaker. That's an area I expect him to grow this year. Franz Wagner is an elite scorer, getting downhill to the basket and finishing at the rim. We're seeing that in the Olympics. Jalen Suggs is an elite perimeter defender. Jonathan Isaac is an elite defender too, both at the rim and on the perimeter. The Magic have more guys with elite skills than they've had since Dwight was here. But Isaac doing it in 15 minutes is a different challenge than him doing it in 24. And that's what the Magic have to see. They have to see him scale up. Isaac is not the only player with an injury past that the Magic need to see step up and be healthy. Why Wendell Carter is a big key to the season. We'll get to that coming up here in just a moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by our friends over at Gametime. As I'm recording this, it is, I think we're getting, it's about 6:41 here on Sunday. We got a little rain band coming through. If it were a little clearer, I might be looking at my Game Time app instead of sitting here recording and thinking, man, I should head down to Interco Stadium and we'll go see the Orlando City Leagues Cup game this evening. The rain's going to be here. We got a tropical storm coming in. It's just tropical storm. Don't worry so much. Probably not the best soccer watching weather, especially if I have to walk all the way down to Interco Stadium. But that next Orlando City game, that next round in the Leagues Cup, if it is here in Orlando, Game Time is going to be my ticket, and it can be your ticket to the game too. Game Time gives you great last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and the lowest price guaranteed. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets and makes the ticket buying experience amazing. I can speak from experience. I used it one time to go to a Rays game last year, had some issues getting my tickets with the MLB app. Game Time took care of me. They emailed me the tickets, got in the game, had an absolutely great time. Too bad none of those Rays players are still on their roster. With Game Time, you can get seat views. You can get a digital panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy, so you know exactly what your view of the pitch, the field, the court is going to be. And with Game Time's ticket coverage, your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. So, like I said, 4 of the Magic's 5 starting spots are locked in for the next 3 years. Paolo Banchero is going to get a max contract. Franz Wagner already signed his. That's 5 years each for them. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope just signed a 3-year deal. We're anticipating Jalen Suggs is going to sign a new contract. That puts the trade speculation, that puts the offseason maneuverings. As much as I love everyone sending me Dennis Schroeder and Anthony Simons and LaMelo Ball and Darius Garland, all these trade ideas for point guards, center is the spot where the Magic are likely a little bit uncertain about their future. And that is not anybody's fault, but the reality is Wendell Carter has struggled to stay healthy. Wendell Carter has struggled to be that consistent impactor. And your best ability in this league is availability. And Wendell Carter has struggled to be available. Now, I've sat here, I will say it again today, I am a Wendell Carter believer. You know, there are people who would tell me Wendell Carter is not the guy. I have my questions about Wendell Carter, but he has not had the opportunity to answer them. And unfortunately, maybe the injuries have answered them. But regardless, the Magic are going into this season with Wendell Carter as their starting center. He's got 2 years left on his deal. And so this is a major season for Wendell Carter and for the Magic. No one will deny and no one will argue that Wendell Carter had a very difficult 2024 season. He averaged 11 points per game and 6.9 rebounds per game, which were both lows since his arrival and his revival in Orlando. Of note as well, Carter played only 55 games, also a low since his arrival. He's played in more than 60 games just once in his entire career. Carter broke his hand 4 games into the season, required surgery, missed about 30 games, admitted after the season that he came back too quickly because he was so eager to be part of this team's revival and of this team's season. He fought through that injury to try and make an impact. And he admitted after the season that it probably impacted him more than he was willing to let on. I would venture to guess too that during the playoffs, he was playing through back spasms, which he had late in the season. He really wanted to play. I want to sit here and say, like, wholeheartedly, you could say a lot of things about Wendell Carter as a player. Do not question that man's commitment and that man's willingness to give himself to this team. He is a calming metronome for this team. He is a veteran voice. When he speaks, everyone in that room listens. He is really important to this team, but you need him on the floor. And last year was a rough season. Now, I made this point, and I think a lot of people would make this point. He is not your typical above the rim center. He is not going out there blocking shots like crazy or flying above the rim for alley-oops. He's not a rim runner like that. I think the hand injury led him to be a little more hesitant to attack around the basket. He didn't want to get hit on the hand. He settled for jumpers a lot more. But Carter can also hit those jumpers. So it's not the end of the world that he does that. In the end, last year was a bad year. No one is going to debate that. Wendell Carter did not do what the Magic ultimately needed him to do at center, specifically in the playoffs. So I think his presence did stabilize them, especially when Jared Allen exited that series. Opponents still shot 58.4% at the rim against them. That trailed only Jonathan Isaac and Goga Bitadze on a strong defensive team. So despite not being able to play maybe above the rim, Carter is a good defender. The question is whether he could get his rebounds back up to 8 or 9 per game, whether he can make a few more shots around the basket, be a little bit more of a lob threat, be a little bit more of a threat around the basket, and whether his shooting can truly space the floor for Orlando. Carter does a lot of things that this Magic team need from their big and from their center. He gives them versatility because he is good enough to guard on the perimeter. He is comfortable to switch and guard on the perimeter, allowing the Magic to switch 1 through 5 in certain situations. He is a good paint presence as a defender. That stuff matters. And that versatility is something the Magic want. It is something I think they believe is really important to their philosophy and how they want to build this team. But last year, we didn't see it. Last year, he dealt with injury. He was unavailable through no fault of his own. It's never been the same injury twice. It was the knee one year, it's the back another year, it's the hand this year. It's never really been the same injury with him. But if he's injury prone, if he has another season where he misses 20 to 25 games, and that's the norm, then the Magic have to ask themselves some real questions about whether that fits their future and whether they need to find an upgraded center. I would argue Carter, just like I did with Nikola Vucevic for a long time, Carter is a good option to have at center. You don't trade him unless you get a better option coming back. And that's the harder thing to figure out because, we saw this summer how valuable centers were around the league. But if Carter can be healthy, if Carter can be that excellent defender, if he can be that floor spacer, now the Magic's starting lineup looks very set, looks very solid, and looks like they complement each other a whole lot better, elevating the team. Because as much as the Magic's depth is super valuable, as much as the Magic's depth means something and is a big part of this team's success, the playoffs are all about your starters. The playoffs are all about the players who are going to play the most minutes. And not having your starting center available to play those most minutes, that hurts. And while Goga Bitadze is a great option, he is limited offensively. He's a little bit of a block chaser, so he gets out of position on occasion. Goga Bitadze does, I don't think he does it for you. And while I think Mo Wagner's made some real strides on defense, like very real strides, been very impressed with his defense in the Olympics, he works really well in that bench role. The Magic need assurance that Wendell Carter is their guy. That's what this season will be about for Wendell Carter. And if he can stay healthy, if he can be on the floor, this Magic team will go from very good to great very, very quickly. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. Of course, find me on Twitter at @PhilipRR_OMD. Subscribe to the podcast and Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Himalaya, Google Play, Spotify, Odyssey, and all the Filmmates Channel podcasts to your podcast-enabled listening device. For the latest on the Orlando Magic, be sure to check out OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You can find us there on Twitter at @OMagicDaily. And for even more Orlando Magic content, be sure to check out my Patreon page, the Orlando Magic Hub, at patreon.com/Orlando Magic Hub. And as always, thank you for your support. Now that you're done listening to us and making Locked On Magic your first listen today, go check out the Locked On NBA podcast, where the season never ends, providing national expertise with a local perspective. You can find the link to Locked On NBA in the description, so you don't need to search. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. That's going to do it for me today, though. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. On our next episode of Locked On Magic, we're going to talk a little bit about the player who shouted out Franz Wagner and why that might be a really good player comp for him. We'll get to that and talk maybe a little bit about the Olympic Games, the Germany Games at 5 a.m., so I'm probably not going to post in time to make that relevant. We'll talk about some other issues with the Magic throughout the week. Do not worry. And, of course, we'll cover Germany's big game against Greece on Tuesday. We'll get to that. We'll get to that on Tuesday or Wednesday. But until our next episode for Orlando Magic Daily and Locked On Magic, this has been Philip Rossman-Reich. We'll see you again next time for another episode of Locked On Magic.